Hi, I'm Erica Gilchrist, the Unstoppable Woman, speaker, author, and trainer. And welcome to WTF, Women Thriving Fearlessly, where we feature personal stories of successful people to inspire women to thrive. And with us today, we have Miss Lonnetta Albright, and she's got a lot of titles, y'all. How about Executive Director? How about John C. Maxwell Certified Coach, Trainer, and Speaker? How about Entrepreneur and Jeremy's aunt?
When I first met Lonnetta, I immediately knew that she was a warm and thoughtful woman, and I wanted to learn more. Who is she? And as time passed, I did learn more about what makes her such an awesome human being. I witnessed firsthand how she commands the attention of an audience from the stage, leaving them with the tools they need to flourish, prosper, and bloom. She's a loyal and dedicated family woman. She's an advocate for empowering future generations. She's a powerhouse in business in a world where very few organizations thrive. And she's a woman who has an overall zest for life. What I've come to know about Lonnetta Albright is that whatever she's planning to conquer next, it will surely inspire, uplift, and show you how to thrive.
Lonnetta, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the show, and we appreciate your time.
Good, so much fun. I'm looking forward to this.
Excellent.
It is a new experience.
That's good. New experiences are awesome.
Yes.
So you've got a lot going on, all right? And we're going to cover a lot of ground because I'm telling you, Miss Lonnetta, you impress me. Okay. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show.
Thank you.
First things first, let's just talk a little bit about ATTC. Okay. Right? So this is something that you started a little while ago, maybe a little bit more than a little while ago. Tell us about that.
Over a decade. Well, actually, it is a nationally funded network of technology transfer centers. And most people are like, what the heck is technology transfer? So we're the Addiction Technology Transfer Center Network. We're funded by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. And we cover the entire country, Puerto Rico, the Caribbean, United States, Virgin Islands, Pacific Islands, and a national office in Wisconsin and Kansas City. So when these centers were created, I believe in 93, we were funded in 98. Mm-hmm. So the centers were created to bridge the gap between research and practice for the addiction field, drug and alcohol. And so you had all these studies and all the research and learning a lot about what works, interventions, motivational interviewing, for example, but no one was using it. Mm. And so the centers were initially called addiction training centers, and we learned that training doesn't necessarily mean that people are going to do anything different. It's disseminating knowledge. Mm-hmm. So in 98, the name was changed to Addiction Technology Transfer Center, and technology transfer being a diffusion sort of model to help people move from the science all the way through training, adoption, to implementation, to actually using what it is that they learn. And most of us are created and established in academic institutions. Mm-hmm. That used to be a criteria, actually. So our home here at the University of Illinois at Chicago was started here, Jane Addams College of Social Work, and it's been our home for 16 years. Okay. So I'm the first director of this center. Very nice. Many people visit us. They think that I have a large team. I've got a very small team for a really big area, because each of us ATTCs, regional centers, cover multiple states. Okay. So we're the Great Lakes region. Currently, we cover 6 states in what the federal government calls Region 5, HHS Region 5. And we started with 3 states, then we were 5 states, then 4 states. We're back to 6 states. A lot of partners, a lot of professionals and systems, and the field changes, and there are things that have changed and not necessarily changed our values though, and what it is that we believe. And so I continue to learn here. It's been a long time, 16 years, and 16 people ask me, how are you still there? It is still exciting.
Oh, good.
We get to be innovative, and in some ways, it's like having your own company. But we are supported by the federal government and supported by this wonderful college. It's been a good home for us.
Excellent. Now, I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted to ask you, how do you keep that exciting?
Yeah.
I mean, 16 years
Yeah.
with the same governing values is
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
But as time goes by, which is going to do anyway,
Yeah.
and circumstances, conditions change, grow, evolve, how does it stay exciting for you?
I think the autonomy that I have, I get to travel a lot, and the people I meet, and then to be able to create things that match what the communities need and what the people need. So I don't have to take the science and try to force it down their throats.
That's
okay,
right.
here's a research study, and it says that it will do X, Y, and Z if you use it. So I'm often in meetings with researchers and my colleagues, and I'm listening to this, and I'm known for being the practical one, saying, okay, I am not taking that back to my community. They are going to run me out of town.
That's right.
Because this doesn't and won't make sense. It won't fly. So having the ability to bring this information to communities, having the ability to change communities, having the ability, quite honestly, to work with underrepresented communities has just been amazing for me. Being able to develop the next generation, which is where my passion is, with folk in their 20s and 30s and 40s, being able to bring women along, being able to bring minorities into leadership positions, and that's been one of my major personal missions, is really around leadership and bringing in folk who otherwise wouldn't get an opportunity. So those things keep me excited, seeing the excitement that it generates, and the freedom. I have a lot of freedom. I've had many state directors that I've worked with say, oh, I'm jealous. Do you want to trade jobs with me? And,
How about that?
And I wouldn't.
I know that's right.
For nothing. And I've got a great dean. I can't say enough about our dean, and she's been the dean since I've been here and has been supportive of the work that we do. And so I think being able to be honest and true and useful, and I love people, and I meet people from all walks of life. And when I got a chance to go to Africa, that just sort of topped it off.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So who would be the ideal client that ATT serves? What does that person look like, so to speak?
I think there are 3 or 4 for us. When we first started was the frontline staff, clinicians, counselors, and treatment provider organizations. Their clients and the people that they serve are people who struggle with substance use and mental health disorders.
Okay.
Our constituents are the people who serve people.
Got it.
So workforce development is a big piece of what we do. It has since expanded to working with the community and working with people who are in recovery. So working with peers and coaches. So we do a lot of training and capacity building that way. The thing that's nearest and dearest to my heart is our systems change work. So we work with hospitals and state systems and county boards and the criminal justice system and judges, and helping them look at their systems. We call it systems change, and shift from the way that we've been working with people, which essentially has been an acute care way.
Okay.
You know, that you get, it's like going to the emergency room. You know, you go into the emergency room and, you know, you get a Band-Aid or cast on your broken arm. But this systems change work that we've been doing is helping people to really transform the way they're working with communities and bringing people into their own recovery. And that's been our work for the last 7 or 8 years, and that's been exciting. So that's been a major shift for us.
And you keep mentioning the word community, which I love.
Yeah.
When organizations begin to get successful, however they personally define that, many of them forget
Yes.
to serve the very people they said they were going to serve, which is how they got the funding.
Yep.
Okay. And I'm really glad to keep hearing you say community, community, community. And practically everyone grows up in a community. So when we say community, sometimes people think, oh, it's poor or whatever. I mean, wealthy people have a community, right? So with ATTC, what's impressing me the most is the people who serve the people in underrepresented communities also have a place where they can be properly trained and be up on the latest trends, resources, and ways to better serve those who are in need. I grew up in a family where we're very familiar, with drug addiction. We're very familiar with all of the elements of an underrepresented community. And sometimes the people who tried to help us, either they were not equipped well enough to assist us, or they were burned out. And this serves that gap. Like you said, it bridges that gap. So thank you on behalf of myself and underserved communities, because I grew up in one of those. And I commend you on what you do. If someone decided, you know what, I want to be an executive director of a nonprofit organization, what advice would Lonnetta offer them?
I got a lot of advice from a lot of different places. When I asked some of those very questions. My dad, who you'll probably hear me talk a lot about him because he was like my best and favorite mentor. And as you mentioned, having families, Dad was an alcoholic. And when he passed away a couple of years ago, had been in recovery maybe 30 years. And his whole life seemed to just open up for him. And I remember when I got my first promotion as a manager, I went to school to be a high school teacher. And I'm like, Daddy, I don't like this business, this boss business. I don't like that. I'm not going to be able to fire anybody. You got to fire people. He said, look, sweetheart, you want to be truthful with people. You want to be clear about what's expected. You give them your commitment. They give you their commitment. And if they don't keep their commitment, you can just hold the paper up. They fired themselves, So Daddy was like, he just kind of go to the bottom line. You won't have to fire anybody if you're honest, if you do your part, and it's clear about what's expected of them. And so one piece of advice I will always say to us to listen to our elders. I know that's kind of old school. I'm a baby boomer, but listening to our elders, I think, is important. And really listening. The other thing I would say is to learn to laugh at yourself. And my siblings taught me this. I'm the oldest, and I was really serious. And Mom died on my brother's 8th birthday. So I'm, of course, now going to be in charge and make sure the family stays together. So I was so responsible. I felt that I needed to have the answer for everything. And I needed to be the one that could save everybody. And I could make it easier for everyone. And over the years, in many different examples, they would tell me either, Lonnetta, you're not in this alone. So they certainly taught me the value of having a strong circle.
That's right.
A strong inner circle. We're all very different, and everybody has different strengths.
That's right.
So as a director, I look for people who are different from me.
That's right.
And that can be challenging.
Absolutely.
And especially when I look for people in the next generation, so they're younger than me, they're different than me, they got their hands on their hips, and, so it is a challenge, but it is what I believe is authentic and makes things effective for different communities. So you got to have different people around you.
That's right.
If you're going to work with different communities and learn how to negotiate and how to understand each other. So I'd say having a strong inner circle, learning how to laugh at yourself. You don't have to have all the answers.
That's right.
What I've recently learned in the last 5 years, and this comes from my coaching life, is try to get the right questions. Because we can come up with a plan. But if the question was the wrong question in
That's
the
right.
first place, the plan is just not going to work.
Yeah.
And
you're not going to get the answer that you need in order to move forward.
And is it my answer? So it's not about me is another thing. And that, I'm not big on cliches without sort of really saying, and what does that mean? Because if it's not about me, what then does that mean for me as
That's
an
right.
executive director? And forgiveness comes up for me, to give advice to someone interested in being an executive director, because if it's not about me, so much is to be gained when you forgive others and forgiving yourself, because you're going to make mistakes.
You're going to screw up.
You're going to make mistakes.
Yes.
Another piece of advice, a dear friend of mine who passed away way too early, Vernola, and I just like to evoke her name whenever I get an opportunity. We sort of came up together, my first job as an administrator, and Vernola, I'd just hire her and take her wherever I went, no matter what company. Vernola was always like, not so much my second in command, she was right there with me. And when we got our first big grant, there were staff, and I said, okay, Vernola, you take these programs and you're supervising the staff. Well, the staff would come around her and come to me, and I would answer the questions, and I'd give whatever answers I'd give, and many times it wasn't what she intended. And she sat me down and she said, okay, you said you wanted me to do this, and you wanted me to be the supervisor and to be the director. Is that true? And I said, yeah, it's yours.
Right.
She says, well, then I need you to stop talking to them and making decisions.
There you go.
I need you to do that and trust me. And it was one of the best lessons that I learned early in my career, is when I give my word and when I delegate, it's even more than delegating, you let it go.
Yes.
You got to let it go. It may not happen the way I'm going to do it.
Yep.
But you trust that it's going to be okay, and you got to let it go.
And it's difficult sometimes because, people aren't going to do what you do the way you do it and the way you think it should be done.
That's right.
So to relinquish that power
Yes.
and responsibility to someone else is challenge doesn't even seem like the right word.
No.
It's almost like you're giving up a part of yourself. And I
It is.
totally understand
Yeah.
that. I heard you mention your family.
Yeah.
I've seen you personally around some of your family. And I said this to you off camera, and I'm going to say it in camera too, because my personal and my private opinion are the same. And I witnessed the closeness that you have with your family, and I got so envious. And I said, I'm going to ask her about that. So tell me about the family and the role they play in the success of Lonnetta.
Well, I mentioned Dad as my first and best mentor. Mom died when I was almost done with grad school, and she was such a, people said I put her on a pedestal. And I used to try to deny that, but the fact is she was like a great woman. And she mentored many. I recall younger women coming to her, and she was their mentor. And to live up, I used to say she was trying to clone me. And so to live up to her standards was certainly one of the early beginnings for me. I'm the oldest of 3 siblings, Denise and Sherry, my sisters, and then the baby in the family, although none of us are babies anymore, my brother Lonnie. And those 3 people probably taught me the greatest leadership lessons because they let me practice, they let me flop. We're all leaders, we're all Christians, we're all generous and committed. We have a lot in common, and yet we're all very different. Denise, who is the middle girl, was very stubborn, some would say, but Denise was so brave, and Denise taught me how to be brave. Cherie could make up her mind, and when she made a decision to do something, she did not waffle. She'd stick to it. She's an author herself now, and a cancer survivor, and we're all just really, really proud of her. I call her Grace Under Fire because she's just graceful. And those two women are my best friends. They're my mirror. They don't let me get away with anything. Once I was giving a speech at Thanksgiving. You know, I was on my high horses. My early years in leadership, I'm telling you, I thought I had all the answers.
Okay.
And I was all, you know, I read more books than anybody, and I'm the oldest after all. So I'm giving this speech at Thanksgiving, and I'm blah, 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 blah. And everybody starts laughing. Now, I'm blah, 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 and Cherie has snuck in and put a box, a Tide soap box down at my feet. And I look down, okay, now they want me to get off the soapbox. So I bust up laughing. So they really helped me turn a corner. And it's just been amazing to have those two. My mother used to always tell us that we would be each other's best friends. Of course, you don't believe it when you're younger. We travel together. We understand there's no need to hide anything. So I can be my most vulnerable and my most honest with them, which also taught me it's okay to be vulnerable. Another piece that I would give to new leaders is it is good to be vulnerable because you lead with your head and your heart.
Yes.
So they taught me that. My brother, while I had no children of my own, he lived with me after I got married and put him through high school and undergrad. And so he gave me an opportunity to be a mom. Although when I needed to make some hard decisions, he said to me at the time, I was getting divorced, and he said, well, I was thinking about leaving. And he said, I know you are staying here because of me, and you won't leave because you think you have to make a safe home for me. And while I love you dearly, you're not my mom, and Dad's still living. Don't do this for me. And
How old was he at the time?
17, 18.
Wow.
Don't do this for me. Dad is here. Well, Dad lived like 4 blocks away, but we wanted him to go in the school district where me and my ex-husband lived. And he said, don't do it for me. And he gave me that permission, and it was one of the pivotal points in my life. And one of the times that I realized, okay, you're not mama. You know, she left, and she left you and said, you know, make sure that everything is okay, but you didn't get the fullness of that. And she didn't mean that you turn over everything.
Right.
And you make decisions based on everybody else. You've got to develop and know yourself too. And Lonnie said that to me, and it started a new life for me.
How about that?
And we stayed together, and for him. So I have so many stories about them, and Daddy in the midst of all of it, who no matter what we did, no matter what we wanted to try, I mean, you know, it wasn't like he didn't have his opinions. He was a strong man too. But I never thought ever that I would be homeless, not loved, not supported. It didn't matter. You know, as an adult, you know, if I needed $500 today, and Daddy, can I have $500? Or Daddy, can I have your car? Or Daddy, I think we ought to do this. And
or Daddy, Erica needs $1,000.
Yeah, exactly. And not only, well, it's funny you should say that because all of my friends come into our family too. So Daddy was Daddy. You know, if you could have been at his funeral, you know, everybody loved him. And so we were always bringing other people home, and he loved them. And so he had many daughters and sons. And then there's Jeremy, Denise's son, my nephew, who is now 27 and just the light of my life. And so when I was thinking about getting ready for you, and I went in my office and I said, okay, what do I think about and who do I think about? And I was looking for pictures, and there was Daddy and Jeremy sitting on my desk, and I said, okay. And I can remember when Jeremy was born, Daddy didn't think he'd ever babysit anybody. And oh my goodness, him and this young man, when Jeremy was maybe 2 or 3, New Year's Eve, he spent with Pop, that's what he called him. And every year until Dad died, and we thought Jeremy would stop at 16 or 17. Every year, any girlfriend, even through his 20s, if you're going to be with me, this is where we're going to be New Year's Eve. because I spend New Year's Eve with Pop Pop.
How about that?
And so Jeremy entering the scene for me, when I talk about leadership being a reconciliation between your head and your heart, Jeremy opened up my heart. You know, and so I've always been very practical.
Okay.
And, you know, if we're going to do this, you do it this way. This is the way you do it. And Jeremy would be with me sometimes. We'd be out. He was, again, a young kid, and he'd want to run around with me on Saturdays and follow me around. And then he'd say, well, I want to stop and do this. I said, but you said you wanted to be with me, so these are the things I have to do. Well, what about my life, is what he asked me.
How about that?
And when I tell friends that, and even a couple of my staff heard me tell that because they know Jeremy means everything to me, when they wanted me to stop doing something, they'd say, well, what about my life?
What about my life?
So my family, who has allowed me to be a leader, be a follower, make mistakes, try anything, start my own business. They're the first to pour money into it. They're the first to introduce me to people.
Very nice.
And we do it for each other. And it's just a natural thing with us.
And they love you as you.
Yeah.
As you are, scars and everything.
Yeah, and you know, so they'll wave their hand at Lonnetta. Okay, that Lonnetta, bring that airplane in for, like you're going to tell me in a minute, bring that airplane in for landing. So
she saw the shift because we're about to shift.
Yes.
So now I want to talk about your passion, forward movement, right?
Yes.
So with forward movement, you've had an awesome career with ATTC, and there's another evolution that's happening here. So talk to us about forward movement.
Well, that's my, I call it the new chapter, the next chapter in my life. I created a company 10 years ago called LHA Consulting Group. And I was training women and doing retreats, and the ATTC kept growing. We have a successful center here. And so I put that company sort of on hold, but it was still there, you know, and it was still, what are you going to do with this passion, and what is that all about? And so I put it on hold, and it was interesting. The year that I got a chance to go to Africa to do some training, I came back through it, and Valerie Burton, I don't know, well, one of her books here, Successful Women Think Differently, is a national author, coach, and I went through her weekend coaching intensive training, and I fell in love with coaching. And then I went through her 9-month certification program, and with the International Coaching Federation, got certified as a coach. And as I was going through that program, the company raised back up, and I said, this is it. This is what is going to make this a reality. And so I incorporated my company, and I was trying to think of a name, and as I was coaching people and helping people to get unstuck and dream and do the things that they wanted to do, I called Lonnie, and I was telling him what I was thinking, and give me some words. And he said, well, you give me some words. What are you thinking? And so I gave him words. He said, well, sounds like you want to help people move forward. What about forward motion? Or either he said it in a sermon or something. And I said, that's it. Well, when I started looking, that name was taken.
Okay.
So I kept looking, motion. So I kept looking to see how I could replace that, and movement was the closest I could come. So forward movement was created a little over 2 years ago, and coaching individuals and coaching groups. Leadership development was always something that within the ATTC network, we used to do leadership institutes around the country. And I was a mentor to many in establishing these leadership institutes. So that development sort of entered into the picture. And then the next generation, which has been my passion, sort of full circle. I started out as a high school teacher. I lived in and ran a group home for teenage girls. I ran a homeless shelter for young adults. here I am again with the next generation. And so forward movement, coaching and training and leadership development, with my primary niche audience being the next generation.
Okay.
Although I get a lot of baby boomers who are looking like me and dreaming about the next chapter in their lives. So I have some clients that are older.
So these are people who are looking to develop their leadership capabilities to thrive in their own ventures. So if I am someone who's starting a company and I know eventually I'm going to have a team, so I would come to Forward Movement and develop my leadership skills and active listening and everything that leadership entails in order to be able to go back and then lead my team. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, yes, and yes, and when I joined with the John Maxwell Group, which then became my next leap, one of the leadership laws in his popular book, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, is called the Law of the Lid. And I really, really like this law, probably more than the others, but all of them are great. But it talks about if the leader's lid, on a scale of 1 to 10, your ability and your effectiveness as a leader, if you're an 8, whoever you're trying to develop, whether it's a team, your family, your children, build an organization, it cannot go beyond a 7. So if you want to grow others, so you're starting a company and a team, if you want to grow others, we have to continue to grow ourselves.
That's right.
So that law of the lid is something that has become extremely important to me. And when you ask, how do I keep doing the things that I do? I keep learning and I keep growing and I keep learning more, because then trying to develop the next generation, I can't teach them and help develop them on things that I'm not trying out and learning from others who are smarter than me. You know, someone said once, if you're at the head of your class, you're in the wrong class. Because what are you going to learn? If you're at the top of the class, what do?
Right.
You know,
exactly.
So learning from people who are smarter, not that they're better than you.
Right.
But for you to develop others, you've got to continue to develop yourself, is what I would say. And what does that look like? So I have folk like that who are looking to develop themselves. I also have companies that are asking about succession planning. How do I develop the talent? What is this next generation, and what does it take to develop the next generation? And recently with high schools, talking about Full Circle, had a leadership event, L2 as we call it, and I had 4 high schools and the principals and the superintendent of the district. So there's a lot of leadership talk. And then I encourage people to break that word down. What do you mean? I mean, you know, because people are, we get these words and we drop them. And we drop them. So what does that mean? And influencing others, leadership is about influence. And so I try to help people peel away from the words and to ask the right questions. Get underneath what it is that they mean and what they're feeling. And so it's done through coaching. And I think coaching comes into play even for an executive director. Right. Because it's asking the right questions.
And you became a John Maxwell certified trainer, coach, speaker.
Yes,
right?
It's so exciting.
Excellent.
Talking about getting bumped up a couple of levels with that group.
So what I'm hearing, Lonnetta, I'm going to go through this process with you, right? So we have the educational system. You were teaching there, and then there was a shift, and you went into human services, executive director for ATTC. Then you followed your passion and started Forward Movement, which I love that name, by the way.
I love it too.
Even if you didn't have a description, you just want to be part of something called Forward Movement. Wherever I am, I want to be further than that. And then getting into the John Maxwell certification process. So now let's take it full circle. All of that, right? Put that aside. Now let's talk about Lonnetta and just Lonnetta,
All right.
through all of that stuff, what were some really tough decisions that you had to make in order to be able to thrive?
In all of that, letting go of things, as I explained in my marriage there, boundaries, setting boundaries was a difficult one for me. It goes beyond just being able to say no, but setting boundaries because I believe in developing others, knowing how far you go and asking questions has been a great transition for me because I always had the answer. That was very difficult. It sometimes was difficult for me to hear too. A friend said to me once, people listen to you. And I didn't necessarily think I was influencing or having the kind of impact on people. I was running my mouth. You know, my mother brought me a Chatty Cathy doll, or if you're a baby boomer, you'll remember that doll. And someone said, people listen to you when you talk as if it makes sense and that you know what you're talking about. You want to be careful that you've looked at different perspectives.
Right.
You know, so don't just take what you hear on, say, mainstream news. Look at some of the underground newspapers. Ask other people.
Formulate your own thought process.
Formulate your own thought process. So that was difficult because I was trained and raised to do the right thing. And I sort of took that as do things the right way. Well, doing things the right way doesn't necessarily, actually, it doesn't match at all, do the right thing. And so to do the right thing and based on what?
Right.
So building my own foundation and who I was probably the most difficult thing for me because I was all about taking care of others, getting others' approval, and trying to figure out what type of leader I wanted to be, what type of person I wanted to be, and to be confident about that and building my confidence. I needed to build my foundation and not someone else's foundation.
I want to go back to the boundaries for women, especially who they want to thrive fearlessly, right? And you talked about making sure that you outline what your boundaries are, but sometimes we don't even know what those boundaries are. What are some clear signs that a woman can experience to let her know that her boundaries are being crossed, even if she doesn't realize it's a boundary?
Yeah. One of the things I experience when I know I'm off is I'm not laughing as much. I laugh a lot and I smile a lot. And when I'm not smiling, something's going on there.
Okay.
When, you hear the other things like when you're eating a lot and comfort food and all of that, you hear all of that. But I'm trying to think of, for me personally, if I don't want to be bothered and I shut down and I'm like, I don't want to be bothered, something's wrong with me because I like people and I like being a part of life. And I don't, I have to stop. And what I've learned to do now is to stop every single day, every morning with my little daily word that Vernola gave me years ago. If I don't start my day off with prayer, reflection, I have to start off in quiet. And I never knew that about myself because I've always been so busy and around people. So I had to learn what helps me to thrive. And what helps me to thrive is getting grounded at the beginning of every day. At the beginning of every day.
Started off right.
Before the noise, before the cars, before the TV, before anybody has an opportunity to get into my head, I have to get myself grounded and reminded that what my priorities are, and also reminded that I have a really great life. I'm just so grateful. And when I think about that and let that guide me,
Yes.
and when I think about people, no matter how different we all are, that foundation sort of sustains me. And then I struggle sometimes throughout the day, and I have to say, okay, well, you were grounded this morning.
Yeah, what happened between then
It's 2:30
and now?
Well, and a lot happened, so I have to remind myself this is something new I've started, and recognizing, step away and go back and reflect. And if prayer and stepping away from the noise, step away. Do what you do in the morning. You can do it again.
Right.
It's not confined to you can only say your prayers in the morning. So
Right. There's no designated time slot for prayer.
Time slot, and you know. So I think we're off when and I think we can only know that when we stop. You know, when we stop to figure out what's off for us.
Right. We know that there's something.
We know that there's
and
something.
sometimes we don't always know what that feeling is. We don't know how to describe it.
Yeah.
We don't know what category to put it in.
Yeah.
But there is a knowing
It is.
there
It
that
is.
you can't quite put your finger on. And when
it's a many times, and I will say this, and many times fear is like at the bottom of most things that we're struggling with. And sometimes we don't want to know, you know, because if I slow down long enough to ask myself the question, then I'm going to have to
I got to do something about it.
Then I got to do.
Do I feel like doing anything about that life today?
Yeah. I did that when I got married. I said, okay, you didn't ask yourself. I was standing in front of the mirror before I got ready to walk down the aisle, and my sisters were saying, don't get married, don't get married. But I was doing things the right way. You know, you go to college, you get married. So I stood in the mirror. They had all gone down. And if I would have just asked myself one question, any question, what do you want? Is this the right, any question? Didn't ask myself anything. I did not slow down. Didn't ask any questions. Just went straight down. And I do think that reflection and giving ourselves time to breathe and to think. Now, some of this maybe comes with age. I don't know. The people that you allow into your life. I'd like to think for younger women coming behind me, that if I share myself with them, that they will be better 15 years sooner. They don't have to wait till they get to my age. So if I share and ask them the right questions, because my experiences are certainly going to be different than theirs, but asking the right questions, this coaching thing really shifted for me a lot of the way I live and the way I lead, because it has become about me adding to other people.
If you don't add value to my life, then
Yes.
I don't need you in my life.
Right. That's right.
And value shows up as a bunch of different things. It doesn't mean you don't stress me out.
That's right.
Because sometimes that situation adds value as well.
Yes.
So for those who are watching this, how can they support you? If they said, you know what, I really like this lady. She got a lot on the ball. How do I support her?
Well, a couple of things come to my mind. First of all is contacting me and sharing themselves with me. If they think they want to try out coaching, contact me and talk about it.
How do they contact you?
Through my email, either coach@LonnettaAlbright.com or LonnettaAlbright@gmail.com. Could contact me easily. I'm always online. They could follow me on Facebook, and I love I just absolutely love Facebook. I could tell you many stories about that even include Daddy and his friends. Follow me on Facebook, contact me through my email, follow me on Twitter, and think about not only themselves, but the teams that they're leading. Whether it's students or staff, inviting me in as a speaker. We do mastermind groups with the Maxwell Group around his newest book, Good Leaders Ask Great Questions. And so there are mastermind groups. So inviting me in, one woman has me coming in to speak to her sister. She calls it the sister group, I think, at her church.
Okay.
The weekend, I think the day after Thanksgiving. So I'm going in and speaking to that group of women. So I think people contacting me, and even if they just want to ask questions and hear more about what's coaching all about and what's this next generation all about.
You mentioned a resource
Yes.
from John Maxwell. So
Yeah.
let's talk about some resources that are available to people who may want, need, desire this type of help. What resources would you recommend?
I think some of the books here, a couple of yours actually, one I picked up when I heard you speak, maybe it's been a year now. I'm a big reader, and these books are also books that move you. They're not just read, but they've got activities. You're the secrets. Yes, so this is yours. I like this. The Secrets to Being an Unstoppable Woman. So that's one. That is.
I did not ask her to do that.
No, you didn't. No,
I'm just letting you know.
I just grabbed the books that are right here, that are right in my face right now. Valerie Burton's Successful Women Think Differently and the 9 Habits here was a big one for me. Both of your websites, I think, are phenomenal. You've got free things there. You've got services there and books. And assessments. I think assessments are a great tool for people. With the Maxwell Group, I've got so many resources. It's amazing. And I'm studying those that I really want to embrace and pull into my company, because I don't work for their company, but I'm a colleague and a team member. So people can go to my website there. I'll have a Maxwell website. But on all of his books, many of which, like this newest one, Good Leaders Ask Great Questions. And this has been a mantra of mine and a philosophy of mine for years now, is getting the right question in front of you. So why questions are important, and we've got a new mastermind on this Good Leaders Ask Great Questions, and also Lunch and Learns.
Okay.
So I've got a website, LonnettaAlbright.com. So they told me to own my name, so I own it. So there are my services there, different packages there.
Okay.
There are coaching packages there. Some of these resources will be brought into that company. I think the biggest challenge for me right now around resources is this transition, my ATTC work, because we've developed that network. If I'd known nothing and have learned nothing, is how to develop resources that are effective.
Right.
And so through the ATTC network, you'll find, and I'll show you some pictures of different resources, whether they're online courses, self-study courses, workshops, and everything that this network does is in the public domain. So there's nothing copywritten. So for a trainer, for example, who is looking for a workshop on recovery.
And they need content.
And they get the entire presentation, PowerPoint, exercises, suggested agenda. They can change it all, learning objectives, but all of that is on the ATTC Network website.
That's amazing. For someone who's a trainer?
Yes, someone who's a trainer, someone who's a clinical supervisor, everything that this network creates, which is the beauty. It's how, again, I love the fact that this network, if there's something that any of my states need or want or are interested in, we don't have to do it, but we've got an ATTC colleague. So this network works across the country that way together. So there are great resources there.
2 things before we wrap up. One, very briefly, talk to us about your team at ATTC, because you speak very highly of them. And I want to make sure that our viewers know that you know how valuable your team is at ATTC.
Yeah, they are. I have a couple of teams. Our internal team, there's a picture of the first group of us, and we went to DC together. So we go for national meetings. So I took them A couple of them had never been to DC. So we went a day early and did some touring. We've always had a small team and 3 or 4 of us. We don't get a lot of federal funds. Maybe a video like this will help them to see that we need to expand the funding. But the central office team is like 4 people. Tiffany, who's been with me now, if I've been here 16 years, 14 years. A young lady who is certainly from our next generation has taught me as much as I've taught her. So Tiffany is here, and Monica, who you met a little earlier, who teaches me much about technology and people ask me, are you ever going to hire any older people? And I'm like, well, maybe.
Well, if they know how to do what I need them to do.
So Tiffany and Monica, they keep things innovative. They're both either finishing school or getting a certification, because I want this place, when they leave here, if and ever they leave, that they take something that they were able to benefit. So Tiffany and Monica. Raphael, who joined us 2 years ago, I was looking for a high-level manager and operations director, and Raphael has changed things for us. The budget is balanced, and that's
important.
And he and I are so very different from each other, and so it adds to our team. And it's a small group. People visit the office, and some years ago someone said, I thought you had a team of 15 people. It was 3 of us in a little basement office.
See, that's when you know you're running an organization well, when people come and they expect this big conglomerate of a bunch of people, and you go, no, it's just us.
Well, I tell you what, though, this is just us plus. And this is the other thing for a new director, is relationships are everything.
Absolutely.
I say that with all sincerity. We cover 6 states. Our partners, our success is as much their success. We owe it to them. So our partners in these 6 states, some of my board members say, I watch you pull these rabbits out of the hat. How in the heck are you doing this on this shoestring budget? It's our partners. And relationships are important and not to be taken lightly, and they don't come quickly and easily. You work at building,
and it takes time to nurture them.
It takes time to nurture relationships. And so from my Native American partners in the Upper Peninsula in Michigan, and the work we've done with them and the different communities, Hispanic communities, colleagues in the states, in the county, people in recovery and their families, they have been teaching us and helping us to shift in the last 6 or 7 years has come from, as you say, the community.
Yeah.
And so that kept me here. And the next generation kept me here. So the ability, again, to do the right thing, not doing things right, but to do the right thing is that team of mine. I can't say enough about them. They make me smile.
Last question.
Okay.
What woman, past or present, would you say is an awesome example of a woman thriving fearlessly?
One woman? Do I only get to name one?
You can name them, but tell us about one. You
Okay.
can name a list.
I can name a list, so I won't name a list because it would just go on and on and on.
And also, if you leave someone out, it's like when you win a Grammy.
I won't start. Yes. Because the 2 who I'll name, and I won't talk about them, my 2 sisters, certainly, and both, there are stories on top of stories, and Sherry and around her health and her cancer, and Arthur and just being gracious, and Denise building her own business, and a writer. And when I think about the 2 of them and me, what comes to my mind is my cousin, who is almost like an aunt, Rochelle. And she's not old enough to be my mother. She is my dad's niece. And Rochelle calls me her first baby. She might have been 14 when I was born. And Rochelle exposed us to a lot, coming up in the 60s, taking us to the movies, teaching us how to ride the train, and taught me how important it is for every child to know that there's somebody that they can trust. You don't have to, you can be in trouble, whatever it is, somebody that they can trust and that they're protected. And she continued to go to school. She was a high school teacher, a high school principal. She continues to this day. And no matter where we are, whatever we do, she's raised two phenomenal children, now adults of her own that are successful. And she's had challenges and disappointments, and Rochelle is in her 70s. She looks like most people think she's in her 50s. She's just
I love
wonderful.
that.
Rochelle is just near and dear to us, and has taught me many things. And there have been times when I haven't seen her for a year, and then she'll come back into our life, and
it's just like no time has passed.
It's like no time has passed.
Yes.
So my cousin Rochelle is who I'm gonna raise up today.
Well, thank you, Rochelle, for being a woman
yes.
thriving fearlessly. And
Yes.
thank you, Miss
Yeah.
Lonnetta. You
Yeah.
are also
Yeah.
a woman who's thriving fearlessly. You have a lot going on, but everything that I see is a positive contribution to the rest of the world. You inspire me as well. Because if you
good.
didn't, I
I
promise
hope so.
you wouldn't be here.
What'd you say?
if
You
I
only
could-
invite inspiring people.
I mean, if I'm just going to be honest, okay, the people that I invite on the show inspire me in
wonderful.
some form
Yeah.
or fashion. And I wanted to make sure that I took all of that
Yeah.
and shared it with the world, because this is a global show.
Yeah.
So, Miss Lonnetta Albright, thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you.
us
Oh, it's
on Women
wonderful.
Thriving Fearlessly.
It was comfortable.
Oh, good.
It was comfortable. I
Excellent.
wasn't nervous. I hope I didn't come across as nervous. We'll
Oh,
see.
no, not at all.
We'll
Did you all see that lean that she did? Just,
Yeah, we'll see.
And then she sat up, and then she turned her head. So no, there was no nervousness
Yes.
that I could tell.
Yes.
So we're going to say goodbye to our audience right
thank
now.
you.
Thank you for
Okay.
watching Women Thriving Fearlessly, and we'll
you.
see you next time.
Bye.
I'm Erica Gilchrist, award-winning speaker, author, and trainer. And thank you for watching this episode of WTF Women Thriving Fearlessly. While you're here, go ahead and subscribe to this YouTube channel, and be sure to share this video with all your friends and all your social networks. And head on over to theunstoppablewoman.net, where we can take your questions and comments. And until we speak again, thrive fearlessly.